Welcome back to the RV Shenanigans Podcast, brought to you by Liquified.
I'm Lauren, he's Ryan, and together we are Miller's in Motion. A couple years ago, we sold our ranch in Texas and now enjoy a new season of life in our Alliance Valor RV.
And enjoying every second of it.
Yes.
Even the parts that make you go, why am I doing this?
Like you're just testing the limits, testing your luck.
Kind of like we did last night as my earplug fell out.
That was not the worst thing that happened.
It was not the worst thing that happened. But last night and the last few days, we've been preparing for what didn't end up being as big of a deal, but it could have been a very big deal.
And it was for other people in the line of that.
It was. What we're talking about is severe weather. It is our main topic. We thought that this would be a good time, especially it is springtime. We are here in North Texas. It is one of those things that always kind of rears its ugly head. And when you're living in a sticks and bricks or a house or an apartment or anything else besides a mobile home or an RV, it's fine. I mean, there's precautions, but it's fine. It's a lot different when you start talking about when you full-time in an RV and you happen to be in the path of one of these storms. And there's a lot more that goes into severe weather. So before we dive too deep into it, let's take a quick break from our sponsors. What's the worst part about RVing? It's the black tank. No one likes to have to deal with a stinky or messy black tank. Let the team over at Liquified RV Black Tank Management help you out. Created from the team over at Matt's RV Reviews, this is a 100% biodegradable product made right here in the good old US of A. Liquified will help break down your black tank waste as well as help with those odors. In addition to helping with those odors, it's got an actually really great orange smell to it. So not only does it help break down those odors, it also helps freshen the bathroom. One of my favorite features is actually this easy measure pour spout. Because it's designed this way, you don't have to bring in other cups or measuring devices of any kind. Dump what you need in for your size tank, put the cap back on, and you're done. To learn more about Liquified RV Black Tank Treatment, you can visit liquifiedrv.com. Do us a favor, please support the brands that support us because they enable us to be able to bring you the podcast and the regular videos. To purchase Liquified Black Tank Treatment, please see the link down below. All right. Severe weather. I mean, let's be honest. It makes my you-know-what pucker a little bit.
That is true. And you are that person whenever it comes through that you like to keep very close eyes on it.
Well, okay, and I think that that's a little bit of a double-edged sword for me because even when we had the house or the ranch, I still did.
Yes.
But that's partially because it's really interesting to me, like how tornadoes can form out of literally Zippo and just kind of what goes into it. I've always been intrigued by the weather, and so when it becomes severe, I'm more into it because I'm just curious. And then on top of that, obviously, I would like to avoid damage to our belongings and ourselves. So let's start off by saying what constitutes severe weather.
So to me, that's anything that poses a risk to your health, your safety, or I guess even in this case, your physical belongings,
right?
Like your house or car.
Dogs.
Or the dogs, of course.
Who are way more important than any of our other stuff because they're our little furry kids.
And I do think it's important to note that this is coming from our perspective in North Texas. So right. Yes, Tornado Alley, all the things.
So speaking of that, it's always interesting talking to people about severe weather because we are on the southern side of Tornado Alley. Obviously, we don't get hit quite as bad as, like, say, most of Oklahoma and southern Kansas, but we are in it.
Yes.
And so every spring, inherently, if there's a squall line or a storm line that's coming through, there is a chance that there's tornadic activity and hail and all of those things in it. So
yeah, and we have had to hide in the bathtub with the mattress and the dogs.
We have. And I will say, too, that we've also lived in other areas of Texas and the country that experience other kinds of weather. And we're going to talk about everything. This is not just about tornadoes. This is about severe weather while living full-time in an RV. If you are in a mobile home that doesn't move, all of these things kind of apply, minus the one that I'm going to say is move. because if you're in a mobile home, that's a little different. But outside of that, then these things all will apply to you. So it's also important to note that we're going to kind of talk about two different aspects of severe weather and living in an RV. There's when you're down, you're stationary essentially, or you're unhooked and you're camping, and the version where you're traveling. Because I think you handle both of those a little differently.
Yeah, for sure.
And so when we talk about certain things, we're going to kind of give both ends of that spectrum of what we would do in both scenarios. So,
all right.
Let's start by the obvious. With any severe weather, the one common thing you get with all of that is pretty much rain and wind. So we're going to start with rain, water, essentially. And obviously, water is an RV's worst friend.
Worst nightmare. And I mean, RVs are meant to handle a little bit of rain.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, they are watertight too, I mean, you can't put them out on the lake, but
they should be watertight.
They should be watertight. And so just because it rains doesn't mean you have to go like put a jacket on your RV. Like it should be able to handle a little bit of this.
Do they even make that? I'm really curious
jacket.
if they make like a dome or something you can like wrap your RV in.
I'm sure they do.
Turn-a-bond is just really expensive. So, right. And I think that's important to know. But when it comes to water, just know that's why it's important to keep up with your monthly maintenance things, like cleaning your slide seals, ensuring everything's working correctly when it comes to that stuff. Because if you have slide outs or anything on your roof, which is all RVs have something on your roof, whether it's air conditioners, vents, those types of things, making sure that your leveling sealants and everything's tight up there. You don't want to get caught in a bad spot where it's about to start pouring and you realize, oh, I was supposed to do that. And now who knows? And so that's why no matter what, once a month, I at least visually inspect things up on top of the roof. Now, once a quarter, I'll actually get up there and walk around. I try not to get on our roof as a whole. I'm a bigger guy. It's just one of those safety things, not just for me, but for our roof. And so I visually will we have a ladder that we can move around, a telescoping ladder. And so I'll look at all that stuff. And then we clean our slide seals once a quarter, sometimes more if I feel like they need it.
Yeah,
and that keeps everything nice and tight.
And like checking the little gutters, making sure they're not gunked up and that water can, get off as it needs to.
Right.
But you can get into a little bit of a pickle if you're getting more water than the average structure can handle.
Sure.
We've actually had that happen before where it's literally raining sideways or something like that.
Last night.
And it came in through like the kitchen vent, the max air vent, because it was just coming in at an angle that, it couldn't be prevented.
Well, and I will say, like, you talking about max air vent covers, we have a cover. So you have the plastic cover that goes up and down when you turn it on. But then you can also get a secondary cover that's more like a shroud that goes over the top of it. It's kind of angled to the front of the RV. We happen to be in a position where the rain was driving from the back of the RV, which it happens. And we did have the vent on for something, and we noticed it was dripping. So now the rain sensor did kick in, but because it's in the front corner, it kind of gets shielded a little bit.
Yeah.
And so we did have to turn off the vent for that reason. But yeah, just know that even if you take a lot of precautions, the whole point of severe weather is that it's abnormally, then it's not like it's just a little rainstorm coming through.
Right, exactly.
We're talking about torrential downpours here, or other factors that we'll get into in a second.
And for example, last night, the squall line that came through dropped 5 inches of rain in some places in
North Texas.
4 to 6 hours.
Yeah.
And so these are incredible amounts of precipitation.
Yeah, and I will say that, when you start talking about rain, the first thing that I think about a lot, depending on how you're camping, is are you on concrete or are you on grass? We've been on both during some storms. And I'll tell you that obviously, if it's spring in Texas, I will actively look for a concrete site over a grass site or a rock site or one of those types of things, just because so much rain can fall in such a short amount of time, and these RVs can be so heavy, especially when you start talking like fifth wheels and drivables. They can get up there and weight that the ground could become so saturated that you actually sink.
Right.
Now, we have snap pads on our rig, so it's less likely for us that it's going to happen versus if you just have the metal feet.
Shout out to snap pads.
Yeah, you can save some money. There's a link, by the way.
But we've said we were in Gulfport doing some storms, and we've said multiple times that the snap pad saved our tails.
Yes.
And we actually it got to a point where we were so concerned we actually moved the RV.
Right, and that's very sandy, loose type soil. So, and in addition to the grass, the slickness of that. Right. So just pay attention to those sorts of little things that maybe you didn't think about until it was too late.
Well, and when you think severe weather, you instantly go to hurricanes, tornadoes. You go to very severe things, and the reality of it is that the water is one of the worst parts. Mm-hmm. The second worst part, in my opinion, not to just move on from water because it's going to be an underlying theme here, but is wind.
Right.
Now, obviously, I'm talking about straight line winds at the moment. We are going to talk about hurricanes, tornadoes, the more severe things. Those are all just technically wind, just condensed. But people don't take straight line winds seriously enough, I don't think. Mm-hmm. And in fact, in our old coach, we were getting ready to, I don't know if we just got back from somewhere or we're getting ready to leave somewhere. And I remember we were out with our neighbors and there was a storm coming in. And it wasn't like too bad. Like the news hadn't played it up all that much. And I remember standing out there at the camera because it's what we do. If we can film it. And thinking, I'll just get a quick little time lapse of the storm clouds rolling in, and then before it starts raining, I'll pick the camera up and bring it in. So we had our nice, if you're watching this, you're on our nice Sony camera. And I stood out there, and our neighbor came over, and we were talking a little bit. And literally, as we did that, we heard like the tornado sirens. I know they're not technically tornado sirens in North Texas; they're severe weather alert or like emergency response sirens. So they're meant to be like.
Pay attention.
Think back to duck and cover. And so it's not necessarily just for a tornado, it's for anything, but the straight line winds were in so excess that they were causing damage, so they blew the sirens.
Right.
Well, of course, immediately growing up in North Texas, everybody called them tornado sirens when we were kids because that's the only time they used the dang things. And so now you hear them, you're like, oh, crap.
It's a tornado.
Yeah, but in North Texas, they've used them for hailstorms because it was so large. There's an event in Fort Worth called Mayfest every year. Coming up. And so, no, it's not. It's past. It's April. No, it's coming up.
No, it's coming up.
And it seems to get hit with bad weather all the time, and they've done it a couple times where, like, they have golf ball and baseball size hail hitting, and there's people at an outdoors event.
I would love to go to Mayfest. This is something I've wanted to go to, but I refuse to go to it because of how terrible the weather tends to be.
Yeah, it doesn't happen all the time, but let's just say they have bad weather more than they have good.
It's true, and it's outdoors.
So... That started to hit, and you start to realize that how much wind can affect an RV. Whether now this is one of those big ones when you're driving or when you're not driving. I'll tell you that I don't know that I have a line necessarily when we're towing, but if I can feel the wind pushing the RV around, and I don't feel like I can control it, and if you drive a fifth wheel or a travel trailer, you kind of know what I'm talking about, where you feel the RV trying to push the butt of your truck out of the way, and we have a dually. Mm-hmm. And so I tell you that my line's a little deeper than if you have like a single rear wheel or even like an F-150 versus a 350 single rear wheel.
And there's bumper pulls versus all the others.
Right.
Yeah.
Just know that if you start to feel the wind push the trailer and it's pulling your butt over it, you should probably consider stopping.
Right.
And then that's going to be one of those where if you do stop, try to point the nose of the RV into the wind.
That's what I was going to say, is there'll also be a different line depending on the direction you're traveling versus the direction the wind is. But on the straight line wind, something to consider is that it's not often reported on those news articles. No. They'll report rotations and tornadoes, but they just kind of glaze over some of those straight line winds. They're hard to measure. They're hard to pinpoint where they are, and they don't really come with a pattern in the same way.
Well, and you can get a gust. Like some news, like they're starting to do a better job of that here in North Texas, where they'll say like, we're going to get 25-mile-an-hour straight line winds with gust up to 60 miles an hour, 80 miles an hour, whatever those gusts happen to be, because you never know when you get one of those outflows from a storm. It just is like this big exhale of air that just hits you right on the side.
Yeah.
And so, but even that, like knowing, so when you're towing, obviously there's the whole, like if you're driving into it, if you have to pull over, try and point your nose into it as best you can. The reason why I say that is because RVs are designed to go down the road. They're designed to go down the road at 65-ish miles an hour. Right. And so it can take the wind a little better if you point into it, because that's the more aerodynamic side of the RV versus, again, if you're in a big fifth wheel or Class A drivable, the side of it becomes a sail. So if you're not moving and you are at a campground, obviously you don't have as much of a say in the direction of your rig pointing. We've had sites that we point directly northwest, which is in North Texas, the sweet spot. Every area has storms that has a tendency to come from a certain direction. It always seems to be the northwest or west here in Texas. So we got lucky there. We are pointed a little southwest where we are now.
Yeah, and we could feel that wind yesterday.
So when it was a straight south or north wind, it's broadsiding us. Now, if it's coming from the west, it's a little bit better because it's hitting along the RV the correct way, which the storm cells have a tendency. So we're kind of in that okay kind of. When the storms come through, we're okay, but when it's just straight line winds out of the south, it's less than desirable. But there's some tips and tricks you can do around there, like we're due for a tank dump right now.
Mm-hmm.
I didn't do it. It's not that it's not overflowing by any means.
Let us reassure you of that.
Shout out to Liquified. Keeping that stuff juicy.
Oh,
sorry. But it's not like we never wait until it's too late to dump our black tank because of reasons like that of water has some weight to it. In fact, I actually put water in our freshwater tank just to give us a little bit more weight. Class A motorhomes don't have a lot. I mean, you guys are pretty heavy to begin with because your GVWRs are way up there, especially if you're in a diesel pusher. But in a fifth wheel, I mean, we can be lighter and the winds can affect us because we sit up a little higher.
Mm-hmm.
And so using the tanks to kind of help anchor you is a good idea. And so that's one of the things that I did the other day, just knowing that we were going to be having storms coming through. I put about half of a tank of fresh water on board. Ended up adding almost 1,000 pounds of weight to us.
You sure? Was it liters or gallons?
Yeah, we have a little. It's called Save a Drip. It's a little water, like you put it at the end of your water hose, and it tracks how much water's going through. And apparently, it was in liters, and it confused the crap out of me. And I thought we were burning through water so fast. But that's just a quick little tip when it comes to straight line winds and all those things. Obviously, when it comes to winds, too, pick up your stuff outside.
Oh, yes.
Don't leave your camping chairs out. And if you have a lighter grill or a lighter table, I mean, if it can handle it, go for it. And then there's the obvious awnings.
Oh, dear goodness, the awnings.
Just if there's ever a doubt in your mind, pull your awning in. Like, don't, like, and I get some people will put those shades that extend all the way to the ground and then they'll tie them down to give a little more rigidity. I don't see, like, I get why people do that. But if you know there's storms coming in, just pull them in.
How about this little rule of thumb as far as awnings? Can you tell this is a soapbox moment for us? Treat them like small children. If you can't see them, don't leave them out. That's my 2 cents.
Assuming you like your kids.
I'm assuming these people like their kids. So yes, if you can't see them, don't leave them outside. And also, if there's a potential for bad things to happen, like bad weather, don't leave your small children or your awnings out.
So it's, I mean, I could even tell you, like, when we got up this morning, there's an RV over here that their awning's all messed up.
Yeah.
And so
we've seen it several times.
Oh, it's almost inevitable. And it's really, like, especially in full-timer parks where the weather's normally good, like Texas in spring is kind of one of those default at not putting it out as a whole because you never know pop-up storms and they're bad, severe supercells here. Mm-hmm. It's not like it's a little bit of rain hit us like Florida in the summer. Mm-hmm. They always seem to get that 1 to 3 o'clock quick little shower that takes 5 seconds. And
that is not what we're talking about.
No, these are severe weather things that come out of nowhere. I mean, you kind of know they're coming, but you don't at the end of the day. And so, yeah, just know that's a big thing. Kind of next, and if you notice, we're going in order of kind of severity here. Lightning.
Okay.
So lightning is one of those things that I feel like people either could care less about it or are so terrified of it.
Yeah, I'm category A.
I am too. I care. Don't get me wrong. Like, I'm not going to go play golf in it.
Exactly.
But it's also one of those things that I don't know how to describe it. It is what it is. I mean, I have to know that our RVs are made correctly to where, I mean, obviously if it gets hit by lightning, you're in trouble.
Yeah, I mean, we're not going to be outside playing in the lightning by any means. We're going to be inside where you're supposed to be, but we're not going to overthink the lightning, I guess. It is what it is. It is
what it is, and it's inherently a sign to me more than anything else. As the lightning picks up, that's typically going to be involved with severe weather. So as you start to hear thunder, it's more of don't take dogs out real quick and get them back in before the weather really gets here too bad.
Yeah.
Typically in an RV park, you're not going to be the tallest thing in that park because most RV parks have trees, buildings. I mean, I'm looking at like 6 power poles just out the window past the camera here.
Flagpole.
Yeah, there's flag poles. The building here is 2 stories because it's an old farmhouse. There's a gazebo over here that looks like it's about 5 feet taller than us with a weather vane on top. And so those inherently are going to be more likely to get struck by lightning versus your RV.
And we don't have some of those, I guess you can call them accoutrement. We don't have like a flagpole or a big satellite pole or some of those other things on our RV. So maybe that's one of the reasons that we also take we're a little bit more lackadaisical about it, because we know we don't have some of the risk factors like those.
Yeah, and that brings up a good point too when you're talking about bringing stuff in. You know, if you've got, like, we've left our Starlink out in some pretty severe stuff, and that's been okay. But if you have something extended really high up, like a flagpole or anything along those lines, that's probably worth saying, you know, whether it's lightning or wind at that point, probably worth, you know, bringing those in with everything else. If you want to put your awnings out, would you put the flag out? That kind of a thing.
Well, and I kind of feel like this might be a good time to mention, this goes across several of these different topics, but where you're choosing to park. Are you in an open space or are you under a tree? And how does that kind of play into all these things?
Assuming you have options.
Right.
Sometimes in RV parks, it's all treed or it's all open. But the park we're in right now is kind of 50-50. Now, we're weeks away from one of the most exciting upgrades that I've been waiting for so long. But I can tell you, when that solar system goes on, shocker, it's solar, I would much rather be out in the sun than under a tree. And I know that's kind of counterintuitive in the summer in Texas because trees also provide shade. Trees also drop crap on your RV, so it's hard to clean.
Like branches.
Well, branches, sap. I mean, you name it. And so it's one of those double-edged swords. But, you know, even here, like, we plan on using our solar system to limit how much electricity you use because we're paying for our electricity in the site we're currently in. Now, if we're not paying for electricity, it's just part of it. I don't care. But you do have to pay attention to, hey, that tree branch is really close. If the wind picks up, is it going to shove back into me?
Right.
Is lightning going to hit that tree and cause it to fall on me? I know, like, the Hanks had a video way back when they were smaller.
Yeah.
That the weather picked up, and I don't know if it was lightning or wind, but a tree branch fell on half of their RV. And, I mean, they had to get a new roof. And,
it caused them some damage.
Some stuff. So, yeah, I mean, just like Lauren said, you have to pay attention to where you're putting your RV.
Yeah.
Now, before we dive into the really severe stuff, like, because on my notes here it says more severe weather, because this is all, like, again, we're not talking about your run-of-the-mill thunderstorms that run through. We are talking about more extreme versions of that. So when you move up from that kind of there's not much of a difference in a severe version and a regular version because they all have lightning, they all have a little bit of wind, they all have rain. But now we're talking about tornadoes, hurricanes, I'm going to say winter conditions, hail, that kind of stuff. It's just another level of severe. And I will say that if you are a full-timer that is stationary, this little brief boat I'm going to talk about probably doesn't apply because you don't want to do it. But if you regularly move your RV and you know something really bad's coming and you've got enough time and notice to get out of the way. Right.
This is not like a 20-minute heads up for a tornado. No.
This is like there's a hurricane coming in 3 days and I'm in South Florida.
Yeah.
You know what? I think it's time to go north/west or east.
That's right.
Like, let's head out of here and just get out of the way of it.
Right.
Now, if you know, like, if you're traveling and you know that there's a line of tornadoes that's going to come through, just go or stop, either one. Like, but just adjust your travels to accommodate. That happened to us recently when we were headed to Florida for the Super Show and RV Unplugged production and all that. There was a string of storms that was supposed to hit the south around the Pensacola, Florida, Mobile, Alabama area. Ended up having a RV park down there get hit with a pretty bad tornado. Took out most of the RVs in that park. I think one person died in it, which it's a miracle no more did. But we had built our travel plans. We were actually shooting the video, if you want to see it. It was our Harvest Host Challenge mega fail, which really wasn't a fail. It just we chose to change because of weather. But we sped up to get out of the way of the storms. We knew we were going to get rained on. We were just trying to avoid the severe stuff.
Right, which we did because the storms were actually going to move from west to east and then kind of turn up north a little bit, and we needed to go west to east and then turn south. And so if we could stay ahead of it and then make our turn, it put us in the best situation.
So that's exactly what we did. And so if you are traveling or have the ability to move your RV, obviously the best thing you do is just get out of the way of the storms. Now, if you're talking about more like kind of pop-up stuff that you don't have the time for, like I'm going to say hail and tornadoes, sometimes you can't do that. I'll be real honest. When it comes to hail, not a lot you can do.
No, even the weather people can't really predict it sometimes when they're talking about the storm. So it's hard to say where it's going to hit the hardest and the patterns.
Right. So moving may not be an option there, because I would say if you're close enough to the storm that you're thinking about moving and you can see it coming on a radar, you're probably too late.
Yeah. Can I just throw this out there? If it's hailing, don't go outside. That is not the time to hook up and move. Please don't.
What if you have a football helmet?
No, denied. No. If it is hailing, please don't go outside.
Yeah, because there's a big difference in kind of the mushy pea size hail and golf ball to baseball size. I mean, a baseball size hail could kill you if it hit you in the right spot.
It could, and then it could do some damage to your truck, your tow vehicle, so many things.
We have the hail damage on our trucks to prove that we've been through this. And Lauren's, for some reason, got hit a lot harder than mine, which is crazy. They were next to each other.
Exactly.
And that's just how random it kind of is. Like, I got a couple of little hail dents in mine, and Lauren's got pelted. But so did the RV. And I will say that, a lot of times with RVs, when you have like a flexible PVC roof like we do, that's why they do that. Like, people ask why they don't put like a firmer roof on and all that stuff, because then a hailstone's going to hit it or debris and it's going to penetrate it a lot easier. And so with a PVC roof, it's less likely. Don't get me wrong, they have their perks and their downsides as well, but that's part of it. Like, we got hit with some pretty good hailstones in a couple of storms ago in our brand new RV, and I don't know how we didn't have any hail damage.
We're talking golf ball size and egg size.
Yeah, we didn't have any damage, thank God. And just know, if you do go through a hailstorm, when it's safe to go back outside and the roof is walkable, you need to go check your roof. Because there's not a lot of precautions, but you do have a lot of plastic things up there. People forget about a lot, like your AC shrouds. Those are all plastic. Your skylights are plastic. Typically, they're going to be double walled, so you should be okay. Just know you don't want to roll too much with one broken one in the inside, one not. Yeah. And then you also want to check your seals. That was one thing that somebody told me once, that where their front cap came over to their roof line, you normally have a run of like Dicor self-leveling sealant and or a Turnabond tape. And the hailstones hit a screw head so hard it broke that. And so now they had a leak point up there. And so just know, like, you need to go inspect your roof after storms, because you never know what could potentially happen while that's coming through. Now, as far as like precautionary stuff for hail, again, there's not a lot you can really do. I mean, I guess you could kind of tarp some things if you want. Like, we throw tarps over our bikes if it's going to rain and they're outside.
Yeah, that's not really going to stop the hail necessarily. I think it's just don't go outside, and it would be my number one. And then check for damage as soon as you safely can afterwards.
Right. And just know there's a statute of limitations on filing like claims for hail damage on those types of things, whether it be your RV or your vehicles. So just whatever your laws and rules are in the state you reside in or use as a domicile if you're a full-timer. I will say, when it comes to tornadoes, this is one of those ones where I'd put as much water in all my tanks as I possibly could if I knew there was going to be like a really high chance of some tornadoes. If the tornado's on the ground coming for you, too late, don't worry about that. I mean, again, it's about prioritizing, right? And I think that's the biggest thing when it comes to severe weather. It's all about prioritizing.
It is.
If you can prepare a little bit, like we knew that these storms were going to be coming, and they had a very high potential of being severe last night. So I prepped the day before.
Right.
We pulled in chairs, we covered the bikes and tied stuff down, put things in the truck versus sitting out. And then I put water in the tanks to weigh us down a little bit better. I purposely didn't do our black tank dump, that kind of stuff. Closed our gray tanks. Because again, just any little bit extra weight can help out in that scenario. And now today I'm going to go clean it all up. When it comes to tornadoes, I think the biggest thing to understand is, and this is coming from Texas residents, I remember when we first moved into our house, we didn't have weather alert alarms out there. And the only thing I could find was Twitter.
Yeah, that was a blonde moment for me, big time, because when our first few, storms would roll through, I was like, man, this is crazy. The sirens never go off regardless of what's going on outside. And then one of our neighbors was like, it's because we're rural. We don't have sirens.
Well, what are these sirens you're talking about?
We'd been in the city the whole time, and we're used to just having the sirens. And so that just kind of skipped my mind.
Well, and then if you ever seen the movie Twister, that like it's still one of the most eerie things when you get like it's calm. It's always calm before the storm, right? There's a reason why people say that. And you get these storms that roll through and the sky kind of turns green, and then you get the weather thing doing that little emergency broadcast, that little meh, meh thing. It's still one of the most eerie things to me to kind of experience that. But, that's another side of it is like, how do you know when this stuff's coming? Let's say you don't have good internet where you're at, or you don't have the ability to watch TV. So there's plenty of ways. One thing that I would recommend is you can get a weather radio.
Right.
They even have crank chargers on some of them so that you can charge them up, and it is just a weather radio.
It is, and in order to use those efficiently, you need to know where you are and some of your surroundings, because they'll name like cities and counties, and so you need to know the general direction based on that information. So a little bit of awareness.
Now, also assuming that you have power to your coach, and I say 110 power, or you have 12-volt TVs like we happen to have in our Alliance Valor, just know like one of the things I always do to someone else's possible annoyance is I like to scan the TVs on the antennas no matter what, just to make sure we get local channels. And a lot of that reason is especially if there's going to be bad weather, because that will allow us to find a local news station, because they're always going to bleep in for the most part if the weather gets severe, i.e. there's tornadoes, there's something else going on. And so if you do lose, like if you happen to have a satellite dish or you have your internet goes down or whatever, you can use that as a backup system. Now, it's not as reliable, because if you lose power for some reason and all your TVs are 110 versus 12 volt, that could be a problem.
And just kind of a caveat here, remember, if you're using Starlink for your internet, that is satellite based, and when the storm clouds roll in, it is unlikely that's going to work very well.
Yeah, so that's a 50-50 with Starlink. It depends on your clarity of the sky. So like if you already have a little bit of obstruction with your view, it's going to get rough. If you've got a really open, clear sky, you may continue connection. Just know electronics, especially if there's a lot of lightning, that will interrupt it as well. It also messes with Wi-Fi sometimes. That's all electronic wave signals, and when you're pushing electricity through the sky while you have all these things going on, it will disrupt it. Have you ever noticed that your internet gets a little bad when you turn your microwave on in your RV?
No.
Okay. Well, it does. It can happen depending on where you are. Like for us, our kitchen's in the middle. So if we were in the bedroom and our internet's in the back and we turn the microwave on, it gets a little worse up front while the microwave's on. It's because it's just interrupting the signals because of the microwave waves. That's why they're called that. The more you know. So moving into kind of any other precautions, if you know severe weather's coming, and I'm not going to say we know every spot and every RV park we've ever been to, like where to take shelter. But if I know that severe weather's coming, I'll find out. So like if we watch the weather, like the park we're in right now is a full-timer park that we keep coming back to. So we know where to go for this one, I think. It's the office, right?
It's the office.
Okay. Most of the time it's the office or like a laundry room or potentially a comfort station if it's a bigger park, that kind of stuff. If we were somewhere else for like a long weekend with other people and then there was a chance of severe weather, I'm probably going to stop by the office, go through the materials they gave us, whatever, find out where the tornado shelters are. There's actually a law in Texas that you're required to have a tornado shelter.
Yep.
Now, it can be the inside room of a house. It just has to be something. Some places take that to extreme and they've got, dugout basements and legitimate storm shelters because, again, Tornado Alley. So just know that, that might not be a law in every state, especially if you get out east. That's not like the chances of tornadoes aren't as high in like out west. And so they may not have that law, but here in Texas, they do. Don't wait till it's too late to abandon your RV.
That's a good point.
We're probably a little guilty of this in some scenarios.
Some of us more than others.
Yeah. Some of us just keep working out. With those straight line winds, there were tornadoes that we were talking about back when we were talking about straight line winds. That same storm system, there were people that were going to the shelters.
Yeah.
In fact, the guy I was talking to, him and his wife and the two dogs went down there. We chose not to because you really chose not to. I was on the fence, but once the wind started to calm down, I was okay again. Because I knew there weren't a lot of tornadoes in our area. It was just the straight line winds. And so once those kind of blew through, we were okay.
Well, and knowing the direction we were pointed, the direction the winds were coming from, just how we were barricaded in, reduced our risk. And then in watching the TV, we could confirm that there weren't actual tornadic activity in our area and some of those things. So that factored into my decision.
So the other side of that too is I will say that, the park lost power, and a lot of times with severe weather, you lose power. So shout out to Todd Henson and Big Beard Batteries, because that coach still had our solar system on it. We didn't know we lost power because everybody else did, and because we had Victron components, which, shocker, we're going to go back with Victron components on the Valor, it automatically just switched over. So you had one little power hiccup, but everything kept working. So Lauren kept working out.
I was doing a workout in the living room.
While every other coach had lost power because the pedestals had all gone dark. Now that park had a bad habit of going dark kind of quickly because there was one power source that liked to get hit by trees a lot. And so that, I would say that if you can afford a solar system, even as a backup, there is some advantage to being able to operate off grid in some capacity. Now, is it a requirement? No. I mean, you got to want to also be off grid. I wouldn't get it just because of a potential storm. But it's one of those fun perks if you do have it, because you off grid, is that you do have that automatic switch over if you have the right components to be able to do that, and to kind of have a backup system. And that's one thing I've noticed with RVing that we always like to have is a redundancy built in.
We really do. And I think it's not just us and our comfort, it's also the dogs.
Right.
Remember? And so if the power goes out, for one instance, it was out for 3 days.
Yeah.
And so it wasn't a very climate controlled outside day. So we really,
it was Texas. It was hot.
It was hot. It was muggy and it was hot. And so it wasn't just us, going to a hotel or doing whatever. And they had no estimated time for when the power would come back on. So being able to produce our own power in a way really allowed us to stay home and function well.
Well, and when we switched to the Valor, we actually went with a generator on board as well. And even this past trip, I said, I'm getting low on regular fuel for the generator. I'm going to stop. Buc-ee's is easy. So we're really big. We can't get into every gas station to get regular fuel. Our generator runs on regular gasoline, and we can only get diesel fuel through the truck lanes with our TSD card. So I have to kind of pick and choose. Now, once we get fuel for back there, I'm good for a long time because we don't use it as often.
Yeah.
And when we don't have the solar system, we've been using it when we boondock or cracker dock or those types of things in transit. So we actually will have 2 different redundancies built in now, because once the solar system goes on, that'll initially take over. And if that were to run low for some reason, we could fire the generator up and then charge the batteries that way. For now, we just have the generator. And so one of those storms went through right after we got the new rig, and we actually ran the generator for almost 2.5 days straight, which is not the most ideal way to break in a generator, not going to lie. Luckily, we had broken it a little bit, just not as much as I'd wanted.
Desperate times, desperate measures.
Right. And I will say that I did a very extensive oil change, cleanup, all that stuff after, because we did run some of that oil a little longer than we should have by about 5 or 6 hours. So yeah, that's, when you talk about tornadoes and redundancy in systems and all that stuff, just know that you don't wait too long to get out of the RV. With that being said, we don't keep a whole lot of very important documents on board.
Right.
Don't get me wrong, it's our home. We still have some things that are very important that we use every day, like our passports, because we travel.
Well, let's announce that.
Well, but okay. But I think it's naive to say we live in here and not that we don't have important documents. Now, we don't have all of our important documents here, just the things we actually need on a day-to-day basis. So like our marriage certificate, as example, that's at the house, right?
Right.
So that's in storage. Here, we use things that we actually need every once in a while. And if we don't need it and it's important, it goes.
Right. And, that's something that they teach you, hey, when you live in Tornado Alley, is what to grab if you have to leave quickly, because you do need certain things if the chance that you may not actually come back to your home or there's too much damage to get back.
And I say legitimately need. I'll be honest, some people would consider a camera not a big need. It is literally my job to document. And so if our camera were to get destroyed, we'd have to stop doing a channel until we could replace the camera. Would we replace the camera? Of course we would. But now that's 2 or 3 weeks of not having videos.
Insurance would.
Well, you know what I mean. We would probably pay for it and get reimbursed by insurance to move that process along. But even my computer is a good example. So many, documents for the business are on this computer. Now I will say that I use we have an account with Apple. So we have Apple, the iCloud storage thingy. And so we do have password protected, some of that backed up there, which is nice. because now I know that if my computer go to complete crap, we do have some things backed up to that. But like the first things I would grab is we have a bin or not a bin, but you have your little file thingy. Mm-hmm. Besides the dogs and some food for them, we'd grab that. I would throw my computer in my camera bag, and I'd grab that. And that's really it. I can live without everything else. The rest of it's just clothes and PS5s and TVs and Apple TVs and things that can all be replaced that I don't want to be destroyed. But at the end of the day, it's way better than anybody getting hurt.
Absolutely.
So just safety wins. And that's, I guess, what I'm trying to say. And that kind of goes for hurricanes, too. We lived in Galveston for a while.
We did. But if you're in one of these dangerous areas, have yourself like a plan,
yes.
what you would grab if you needed to. Because if you never think about it and then you're in that situation, the panic's going to overtake and you won't be able to think. So ahead of time, have a plan.
Right.
All right. On to hurricanes.
So with hurricanes, we lived in Galveston for a little while. Lauren went to University of Texas Medical Branch on Galveston Island, so we lived in that area. And so it's funny, and I understand now, like when people come to North Texas and like they're calling for tornadoes in 12 days. Like it is Texas in spring. That forecast is going to change 73 times in 12 days. Like I'm worried about tomorrow. After that, we'll see.
And they may not even know what's happening tomorrow exactly.
No, that's more of an educated guess. And it's like the RV Unplugged rally. Like they were calling for some pretty severe weather. And I run all of the rally and in-person stuff for RV Unplugged.
2 weeks ahead of time.
What are we going to do in the case of weather? I'm like, worry about it when weather becomes relevant. I got so many emails, and I ended up just having a canned response. I think we actually just sent one out to everybody because I was getting so many of them. And I just said, listen, it's Texas in the spring. This stuff changes quite frequently. They could be saying this now, and literally it's sunny the whole time. And so we will judge the weather. The event was rain or shine. Just know we're not putting anybody in danger. We do have weather contingency plans. These are all built into events.
And you had an emergency plan if there had been a tornado.
Yes, we did. And so we had ways of communicating with everybody, and it's like just everybody take a break. Like let stress lose for a second.
It's going to change. It's going to change so many times. So that actually happened here yesterday where we are. They'd planned like live music and having food trucks come in for the evening and everything. And they got worried because the weather was supposed to be so bad in the afternoon that they canceled everything.
Hey, guess what happens?
It never rained until 3 a.m.
Yeah, there you go.
And so that's what we're meaning is, yes, they may know something's coming, but they may not know exactly the time, and you have to allow some flexibility.
Well, when you talk about, like, if you're from North Texas, you know exactly what we're talking about. If you're not, like, it's not those pop-up Florida showers from 1 to 3 as everything heats that just kind of pours for a second and then goes away and you're back in the sunshine 10 minutes later. I mean, these things, some go fast, some go slow. It depends on how much Gulf moisture there are. It depends on how much that low trough coming out of the Colorado area is. I mean, there's so many factors in these things. Like yesterday's a great example because they thought this thing would fire up and then it would slide down and it would hit. It literally sat on top of Wichita Falls what felt like for 8 hours.
Oh my gosh, they got pounded yesterday.
I don't know how much rain they got, but there were tornadoes up there. Yeah. I mean, literally just right over there. But because our high pressure cap didn't lift quite as much, look at my weather knowledge. I just paid attention to the news yesterday. That's all it was. Because it literally kept the storms up there because of it. Yeah. And then it finally broke down overnight. And then they picked up their speed that they were supposed to have the whole time and raced through.
Right. And but those poor people in Wichita Falls, they weren't expecting that to just camp out on them either. So just as much as our plan changed, so did theirs.
Right, because they thought it'd run through and they'd have the evening.
Yeah.
They did not.
They did not.
And so whether it's bad or good, just know that weather is a very fickle thing that as good as the science has gotten, there's still no way to officially predict tornadoes. All they can do is predict the potential for tornadoes.
We started this by talking about hurricanes.
I know, but hurricanes are a little bit easier to predict, so I was using that as an example.
Gotcha.
When a hurricane's coming, they kind of know, like back in Africa, like there could be a hurricane in 2.5 weeks.
Right.
And that's why, like, if you're an RVer and you get caught in a hurricane, I'm sorry, but move. Like, I've seen them predict hurricanes 2.5 weeks out because of low pressure coming off of Africa. Like, hey, this is going to come this way, and the way the jet streams all go and the models all fluctuate, like Florida may have some problems with this one. And so, like, you can start making a plan then.
And I know the plans, again, like they may aim for one place and miss it by a little bit, but just get out of the way.
That's one of those things, too. Like a tornado, the chances of you getting hit by a tornado is really low simply because they're typically not very big. Yes, there are some that can be very big. Hurricanes are hundreds of miles large. So they don't, like, the eye wall can move 20 to 50 miles, like, in a day. Like, oh, we could be down here, but, oh, it hit 60 miles up this way. When it comes to tornadoes, that's not the same thing. Like, trying to avoid a tornado with that mentality is literally like trying to find a needle in a haystack. Like, what's it not going to hit? Who knows? Because literally wind could shift it that way real quick and hit a house.
I was going to say, you have probably a better chance of winning the lottery than predicting where exactly it's going to hit.
Well, in a lot of places they'll say, like, you'll see all this devastation, like in a neighborhood, and then there's like one street of houses that looks like nothing's happened. Except they have debris in their front yard, and you're like, the crap?
That happened to us at the ranch because we saw on the news that there was a tornado coming, and we saw like the tornado chasers and everything sitting on the bridge, and it was really kind of terrifying.
By
we thought we were in for it, and we literally watched the tornado skip up over our neighborhood and land on the one directly north of us.
Yeah.
And so it hit before us, it hit after us, and it did not hit ours.
Praise Jesus.
Yes, thank you very much.
And so that's like with hurricanes, they can get more intense and less intense, but that range it's such a slow change. With tornadoes, it's a very fast, quick, agile change, if that makes sense. It's kind of like the difference in driving a sports car and an RV. And it's not like hurricanes can be devastating, don't get me wrong. But I feel like if you get stuck in a hurricane with an RV, it is your own fault to a point.
Cruise ship versus a jet ski.
Kinda. That's another great example. You haven't noticed we got cruises on the mind. So yeah, when it comes to a hurricane, just know, like, if they're forecasting one to hit like the Gulf side of Florida, have a plan. Like, hey, if this gets a little more serious, what's our drop dead date? When do we have to leave by? Like, give yourself a couple of days and say, hey, listen, if this does in fact stay on the path that they're projecting, we need to leave this time. Let's try to get here, knowing that some other people are probably going to be doing the same thing, so build extra time into it.
And extra resources.
And
your patience pants.
That too. And just have a plan to get out. And if you can afford to get out early, get out early. Like, why?
Just do it.
Why not? Like, I know when we were living in Galveston, we had one or two hurricane threats. And I had to train my brain to work with a hurricane because just like it doesn't get hit as much as Florida, nowhere near as much as Florida. But the Texas Gulf Coast can get hit. I mean, New Orleans was Katrina. And then the Gulf Coast, Ike hit the year before, 2 years before that we moved down there. And
then they got a big one right afterwards too.
Right. And so we had to kind of train ourselves. Like, we always had, I called it the go bin because this was a little different. We didn't have an RV back then. We lived there. And so it was one of those things. We took all our stuff, and then we just kept, like, we took all of our stuff. We didn't take like wedding pictures that we hang on the wall and all that because we moved so frequently. We did leave that in storage up in North Texas, but we still took all of our documents for things, and we kind of kept everything in little, I called it the go bin. And if it ever got to that point, we're going to throw all the stuff in the back of the truck and we're going to get our asses up to North Texas. I said a bad word on the podcast, and I'm sorry.
You need to be bleeped.
I don't know. Maybe I have a bleep button over there. And so it's one of those deals that just pay attention to the weather a little bit, especially if you know it's hurricane season, if you know it's spring in Texas and Oklahoma, it's tornado season. Even if you're just crossing, around, a lot of people don't hang out in this area in spring because of the weather.
Right.
It is volatile and it can be aggressive at times. And so a lot of people will stay on the East Coast or they'll bolt over to the West Coast in the spring. And even if you're just coming across, just know there's a chance. And so, I think that goes to, like, pay attention to the weather in your area, even if you're only going to be there for a night. Right. Like, you don't want to get stuck at a Cracker Barrel and a tornado pop up. Like, that's like the worst case scenario. I say that only because there's no normalcy to it. You're probably still hooked up, or you have your toad hooked up if you're in a drivable, that kind of stuff. So I think that comes back to just be prepared at all times.
It does. And this is a little bit of another soapbox moment for me. When people talk about severe weather and they're like, I'll be fine. Okay.
You're not.
That's cool. You might be. And the greatest chance actually probably is that you yourself will be fine, but you may need resources.
Right.
And now that's going to require somebody else. And then on the off chance that you are not in fact fine, you're putting somebody else's life in danger having to come get you. Right. So yes, we want you to be safe, but also remember who you're impacting if it goes to hell in a handbag.
I thought it was a handbasket.
I'm a woman. It's a handbag.
Oh, that's comforting for my pocketbook. And that's exactly right. So just have an understanding, whether it's just kind of driving through a couple of things that we use in that process. We mentioned a weather radio. Mm-hmm. We're bad. We don't actually have one. So do as we say, not as we do. I say that because I think you can get away with not having a weather radio if you have a good understanding of what's coming. Because I enjoy understanding what's happening, I have a pretty good idea of what's going on.
I have a weather radio.
Yeah.
It's right here.
But we also know that we've got power systems to where we can run our TVs and other redundancy things that cost a lot more than a weather radio. Just know that the weather radio is the old trusty thing. And so if you have a concern, go get one. They're not that expensive. You can get them for like $40. I know Midland makes a really good one that's battery powered that lasts a long time.
And while you're there, pick up a good flashlight.
Yeah, I was going to say a good flashlight. We have one really good flashlight plus some other headlamps and some little rechargeable stuff that we use. Any sort of a power redundancy system, if you want to take that extra step, obviously you can do that. One thing we didn't talk about a whole lot was what if winter weather were to pop up?
Well, the good news about that is, again, usually it's kind of like the hurricanes where it's somewhat predicted. And so they're going to say, oh, we're going to have a cold front moving through. There's a chance of precipitation and whatnot. So I would take kind of a similar thing that if you think that's coming for you and there's a chance of like wintry precip or something, trying to get out of the way if it's reasonable. We've been caught in some winter storms before because it just wasn't reasonable for us to move. And I'll say the RV handled it pretty well.
Yeah, again, one of those be prepared situations. Like it's all, if you haven't noticed, we have a theme going here with weather.
Right.
If you know that it could get cold, make sure your propane's topped off. And you're not running with the last 5 gallons in your second bottle kind of a situation.
And hey, maybe even you purchased an extra one just to swap out on the off chance.
Yeah, that's a good point. A lot of feed stores, like Tractor Supplies, those kind of things, they sell empty tanks and then they also have fill stations. So you could go buy another one and have it. So if you are in an area where you can't be, like let's say you're wintering up somewhere and they don't have a propane fill, you could buy another tank. Now, if you're wintering in the north in the winter, you probably already have a plan, hopefully.
Hopefully, yeah.
You're not just winging it. But you're exactly right. And it's part of that just be prepared situation. And if a winter storm were to pop up on you, because they can, like in spring right now, like it snowed in Colorado yesterday.
Right.
It is April 28th. I know that they're at higher elevation. I get it. And the roads are treated and it's a little bit different. But
still unusual.
If you think there's ice on the ground, the last thing I would ever do is tow an RV.
Oh, my goodness, yes.
I barely want to drive in it.
The stairs alone, when they get iced over, are treacherous.
Ask my butt.
Oh, my gosh. It is so much worse than you think it is. They're elevated. They ice over in a heartbeat. And, yeah.
They also are treacherous if you leave a speaker that's a cylinder and you've had too much whiskey.
We are talking about weather, not poor choices.
This could be weather related.
Could be. But in the winter weather, some people will actually put skirting around the RVs because they're being prepared. They're trying to trap some of that heat. A couple of things. We have the tank heaters.
Right.
And so our tanks aren't going to be as likely to freeze. But remember, some of your pipes and things may still be exposed. Disconnecting your water supply.
Yeah, and all the things that you would go into with winter camping apply in a very short, quick time span. And so just know you have to kind of be able to pivot if that could happen.
Right.
We're not trying to discount winter emergencies, weather emergencies, and those types of things. Just know that it's not as, like, I don't consider like a blizzard as much of a severe weather thing. It is, and it can be, don't get me wrong. But I'm looking for the things that could actually come in and blow the RV over.
Right. I was going to say, I don't think that the winter weather we've experienced is anywhere near blizzard worthy. I think it's been Texas snowstorm worthy.
We also actively avoid cold weather if we can help it. And that's the beauty of full timing. If you are, I mean, we do come back to Texas, especially around the holidays. We will always be here more than likely from Thanksgiving through Christmas. And then New Year's is a bit of a wild card every year. But there's always a chance of the cold weather when that hits. And then depending on, we've been in Florida the last January and February for a couple now, or at least most of January. And so that's the beauty of full timing. You can kind of avoid some of these things. So if you're a full timer that's on the road a lot, just learn the weather patterns of the country. Like, it's not
like it's just that easy.
Well, but okay, so if you're gonna go to Florida in August, July and August, I have a shocking truth for you. It's gonna be hot and humid. I know. World news here. If you're coming to Texas, Oklahoma, Kansas, Tornado Alley in the spring, guess what? There's going to be severe weather. And so whether you get it or when you don't, that's a little bit more spotty. But just be aware of the weather in the area you're going to, and then learn and develop the things you need to develop in the moment.
So I don't know if you remember this, but I think it was the Hanks that went to Alaska, and they got a tsunami warning while they were there. That's something I didn't know. I hadn't processed that. Of course, I'd thought about the cold and some other things. I hadn't really thought about the risk of a tsunami in Alaska.
I remember them kind of panicking over it too.
Right.
And then they went into the campground office after they drove around for a little bit, and they're like, yeah, that happens a lot.
Right.
I'm like, oh.
So maybe actually talking to some of the locals might give you a little bit of perspective or information that you can't get off of the web.
Well, and that's a big reason why we like to talk about tornadoes and kind of supercells and Tornado Alley so much, is because that's our local weather. And you can always tell too, like of all the emails I got one email from a fellow Texan that was like, hey, is there a weather redundancy plan? Yes. Okay, thank you. It's just funny because they understand kind of what they've signed up for, if that makes sense. And so, yeah. I know that's a lot, and it's one of those things that I feel like it should be talked about every spring.
It should, especially when you live in a paper mache house.
Well, and we do appreciate our loyal followers, because you guys have probably heard us talk about weather on the main channel. This is the first time on the podcast that we've talked about it a little bit more in depth. Just know that these are some of those topics that we're probably going to talk about one way or another every spring. And I say that because the 7,000 of you that follow us may have heard it, but the next 4,000 may not have, or the next person may not have. And if this information can get across to one person and help them avoid a potential catastrophe, because if this were to be destroyed, that's a catastrophe to me. I mean, it's literally our home getting sucked up by a tornado or whatever, sure. And God forbid us or one of the animals or something important being here when it happened. That's our ultimate goal with this channel, is not just to entertain and to give tips of travel. Are
you getting it, edutainment?
I don't like that term. But it is one of those things that it's important.
It is. Mm-hmm.
And so we do appreciate it. If you're one of the guys that have been around forever and you listen to this whole thing, we appreciate it. If you're watching this on YouTube, please give us your best weather tips down below. We are working on a new way, I don't think you know this, to interact with you guys through the podcast. We are incredibly thankful. The podcast has gotten big quickly. A lot of it because of the main YouTube channel. But with that being said, just know we're going to have to make some changes here pretty soon to some logistical things because of the podcast size. And so one of those that is coming, and you can look for it here pretty soon, is that the podcast is about to have its own YouTube channel.
It's all grown up.
It's graduated, I think is the term we're putting in our social media post. But it is going to have its own YouTube channel. So one of the big asks that we're going to have on the main videos here pretty soon is, if you're also listening to the podcast, please go over there. One thing that you start to learn with YouTube and all the social media stuff is analytics are king. And unfortunately, because even though it's similar content, it's structured very, very differently.
It is, and we kind of have two different audiences in a matter of speaking. There's some crossover, right, but we really do.
And that's been the problem, actually, is because a lot of our videos have been squished pretty badly because YouTube has no clue what we're trying to do right now.
Yeah.
And so we are going to leave the main channel the way it is. The Saturday video is not going anywhere. It's going to be on the Millers in Motions channel. And then the RV Shenanigans from Millers in Motion channel will be the podcast and a little bit more RV deep dive travel stuff and all of that. So just know that that's coming. But in doing that, we're also coming up with some new ways. I really want to get to a point where I can have a voicemail to where you guys can actually ask us questions. We'll play it on air, and then we'll come back and answer it and have a conversation. So that's just know that there's a lot of things in the works for that. So anything else on severe weather you can think of?
Not that I can think of.
Okay.
All right.
Thank you guys so much for watching. Hopefully you got some information out of this that is helpful and or useful. And I guess the best thing to say is stay safe and stay dry.
Sure.
Thank you guys so much for watching / listening, and we'll catch you next week.